All right. Hey, I'm one of four kids in my family. My sister is significantly older than me, and I remember a few years back she called me and we were on the phone, and she says, you just lived a charmed life. And I listened to her, and I'm like, my life's not charmed. My life is full of good choices and wise decisions and healthy lifestyles and all those things, right? And I don't count anything for luck, really. I'm not really sure I believe in luck. The truth is there are some things, though, I just don't have an explanation for. I was driving down 275 a couple years ago, and those moments where you decide to sort of turn off the radio and just let the quiet of the car sort of take over, where your voice inside your head gets a little bit louder than like it normally would because you just have a conversation that begins to bubble up and you're quiet enough to listen to yourself and you realize, I might be crazy. I had this sense, this stirring inside of me that I needed to call a friend of mine. He'd been going through this time with his wife who was battling brain cancer, and I just had this sense I should call him just to encourage him. So I pick up the phone and he doesn't answer. So I just leave him a voicemail and tell him, hey, I'm thinking about you, praying for you. I just know you guys are going through a lot. I just want you to know there's somebody out there that's thinking about you. And I hang up the phone and keep the car silent and kind of go a little bit further. And then all of a sudden, that same sort of sense, that stirring, I hear the phrase red 14. And I'm like, what? Red 14. I'm like, what in the world is red 14? And within a few minutes, I pass this sign. It says Hollywood Casino. Now you need to understand, I've never been to a casino in my life. I've seen movies about casino. There's some real classics out there called Hitting the Nuts. That's a great one. It's on Netflix. I don't think it's about a casino, but it's like, you know what I'm saying, right? So all I know is I think from what I've seen on television, red 14 is I think that's the game where they spin the wheel and this ball goes around and it lands in these numbers and colors. And I'm like, oh no, this is just the dumbest thing in the world. So I drive on by, go to where I was going, and about an hour later I'm coming back by. The car's still silent. And I start having that conversation. Because for me, sometimes those stirrings inside of me, I wonder, for me, is this God trying to speak things into my life that I could just take the risk and try? Calling your buddy who's going through something, that's one thing, right? But red 14, God doesn't work this way. Not in my life, right? And so I look down and I'm starting to sort of the negotiating process with yourself, right? You've been there? I'm like, well, what would you do to find out if God really spoke to you? I'm like, I'm not sure. And so I look down. I don't carry cash very often, and I have one bill in my car. It's a $20 bill, and it's sitting right here, right above the gear shift. I'm like, well, would you spend $20 to find out if God really spoke to you? And I'm like, yeah, I'd spend $20. Well, what if you lost it? It's not a big deal. It's $20. Not that. I probably lost that in laundry in the last couple of weeks, right? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, and I'm like, okay, here's what I'll do. I'm just going to go find out. So I pull in, and all I do is I grab my ID, and I grab my $20 because I know they're probably going to check my ID because I look so young already. And so I walk in. I have a $20 bill and my ID in my hand. This is all I have. I walk in. They stop me. They check my ID. And I'm like, where's the table that they have the spinny ball thing and the colors and numbers? And they're like, right back there. And I'm like, thanks. So I realized very quickly, well, on all the movies I've ever seen, you have to have the chips to bet. And I'm like, where do they keep those? And so this lady walks by, and I'm like, excuse me. I was like, where do I go to get the chips to bet with? She's like, oh, honey, they'll take your money at any table. And I'm thinking to myself, you're right. They're probably just going to take my money. And so I walk over. This is a Monday, 2:30 in the afternoon. And I'm thinking, nobody will be here, so nobody will see how stupid I'm being right now. And I walk over, and yet the table was completely surrounded with guys, 2:30 in the afternoon. Who knew? I'm like, shouldn't you guys be working? And then I realized, you're standing here as well. And I'm like, okay, don't judge. And so I'm trying to find a spot. Nobody lets me get in. And so I walk down to the end of the table. Again, you have to understand, I have no comprehension of how this works. So there's this glass wall around the wheel. And I go to hand my money to the dealer. And it was as if I was stealing his child. He goes, no, don't get near the wheel. And I'm like, apparently this is bad, okay? And so I was like, I just want to bet. He's like, okay, come down here, we'll work you in. I'm like, so I hand him my $20. He gives me my chips. It's a very small stack. And he says, all right, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to bet. He goes, what do you want to bet on? I go, red 14? He goes, all of it? I go, sure. So they slide it over, and they spin that wheel. They hit that marble. Now, when you're watching it on a show, right, it takes it like 10 seconds, like, dun, 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 dun. It spins for what feels like 7 to 8 weeks is kind of how it felt. Because the whole time this ball is going around, I'm going, you're the dumbest human on the planet. What are you doing in here? You couldn't be any stupider. Don't tell a soul about this. Just leave before the ball lands. They will all look at you like you're an idiot that bet $20 on red 14. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, just leave, just leave. And all of a sudden you hear the ball, dun, 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 dun. Red 14, winner! And I'm like, that's me. And so here's what I did not realize about the game of roulette. It pays 35 to 1 odds. $20 bet, they give you $700. That's a lot more chips, by the way. And so it's so many chips that he has to call another guy to give me that much money, as if I were stealing it. And so he slides me my chips back over. One of the guys goes, you got any more numbers? I was like, no. He goes, why'd you bet red 14? I was like, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. And so I pick up my chips, and I look at the dealer, and he goes, any more bets? I go, 1 number, 1 bet. I said, one last question. He goes, what's that? I go, where do you take these to get the money? So he sends me over to the cage. I take it. It takes me longer to walk in and out of this casino than it took me to place my bet. And I get back to the car, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I explain to my wife why I have $700? You know, I was gambling today instead of working. But look, it was a really good day at work. And so I tell you all this is that, you know, I sat in my car, and I still doubted a little bit. But here's what I do know. I do live a charmed life. I live a charmed life because I believe God wants to speak to me, which makes me, in my mind, the luckiest person alive. And I'm not sure I really believe in luck, but there's a lot of things I really can't explain. Thank you.